Hello, Sarah.
Good morning.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. We've got some sun this morning. It's a lot brighter and more
Lovely.
spring-like.
So, Sarah, it's 4:30 now. We can start now.
Okay.
Okay. So just give me 5 minutes to introduce, just to share the norms of today, and then you can take over.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Diksha, and I will be your host for this event. We are excited to have you all here today to learn about Jolly Grammar. So in today's workshop, we will cover Jolly Grammar 3 and 5, 3 to 5. Thank you so much for coming today, Sarah, to share your knowledge. So before we begin, I like to share the norm of today. The event will follow the same instruction as before. We will put everyone on mute except for our speaker to avoid any disruptions. We will disable the chat, so please write down all your questions. And at the end, there will be 10 minutes questionnaire session, and then we'll enable the chat for everyone. This session is being recorded as well, so which we will upload to our YouTube channel. So please stay until the end. As we all know, there is a 5 minutes assessment that must be completed in order for you to obtain your certificate for this webinar. I will now turn the rein over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Say good morning. I hope yesterday's assessment went well and that you all got full marks. So I'd like to think of it as a quiz rather than assessment. So makes it sound a bit nicer, doesn't it?
Yes.
So today we're moving on. And we are moving on from 1 and 2 up to 3, 4 and 5. We do actually have a 6, which I shall come to briefly. But as I said yesterday, the program, the course follows a similar pattern all the way up. And again, you can have it either as a handbook, which is photocopyable, or the teacher books and the pupil books, where the children write into the pupil books, but that is entirely up to you. The content is the same. I know that sounds boring. I know I said it yesterday, but you can't believe how many times people ask me what's the difference between them, or is there any difference between them? It's, as I say, it's really how they're presented. The pupil books, the children's pages have got a bit of colour printing on them. The only other thing that you do get if you get the handbook that you don't get on the grammar and pupil book is that there are some templates at the back for you to photocopy and create some resources of your own sometimes. But that's the only thing that's different. As I say, the content is the same, whether you have the handbook or whether you have the teacher and the pupil books. And in the UK, this will take us up to the end of our primary years, which is basically sort of about 11 years old. And I have to say that by the time they get to the end of Grammar 6, they are quite good. They're covering quite complex grammar. And people, raise an eyebrow and say, wow, I'm not sure I did that in secondary school sometimes. So, as I say, we're going over all the time. We revise, we introduce something new, and we move them on. And as it says at the top, it is cumulative or systematic. Don't mind which word you use, but always bear in mind that is the case. And don't think you're just going to be able to jump in at a particular level. You might be able to if you've been doing various grammar and things before. The spelling is probably easier to do that too, but always check what the children are expected to know before you decide where to start. Obviously, once you've got the course going and it's rolling through, that's not a problem because you know exactly where the children are coming from and going to. I would just give you a tip really as a teacher and say that it's always a good idea to look at the other year groups the head I used to work for, that I worked for when I first started teaching, we had to change year group every 2 to 3 years, because he said we should know where the children are coming from and we should know where they're going to, because then, you know, we know the gains they need to make within a particular year and the standards that are being looked for. And while we all grumbled as we packed up our classrooms and moved to a different classroom and other such things, it's actually very, very true, and gave a very good grounding, rather than, you know, just teaching in year 2 for 25 years or whatever it might be. So let's move on today. Again, very similar. You heard this yesterday. You will have a teacher's page and a pupil page, okay? And on the teacher's page, it will tell you everything, more or less everything, that you need to know. So do read it. Again, it goes through the same thing: revision, a main point, so how to explain what you're teaching. It goes through the spelling list, what to do on the sheet. So it's all there for you. We try and make your life easy. And if you look at the top, where it's got the little notebook, as I say, the same for grammar. On that little notebook at the bottom, at the top it says prepare, so it tells you what you need: coloured pencils, scissors, whatever it is. And then underneath it says builds on, and it will give you where we've done this before. Now, in this case, it happens to say builds on grammar handbook 3.2. So if you go back and look at 2, okay, it's all about the main alternatives for the A sound. Now, we cover that in 1 and 2, but you don't really want to have to go back to grammar handbooks 1 and 2 if we are covering it within this particular handbook, and it's a revision there. Okay, so that's why it only gives the grammar 3 reference. So always have a check back, and then you can see what it is the children are expected to know. And if you think they don't know it, teach it. Again, that sounds a completely stupid thing to say, because obviously people are going to do that, aren't they? But again, I have come to find in life that nothing is obvious, and that people think they're just going to keep ploughing on, and it's not going to make any difference, which it does. So as I say, you know, always, you should always be assessing your children anyway as a teacher. And this is just an extension of that, really. You just make sure that they do have, you know, instead of revision, that could become a teaching point. And if you need to do another lesson or another hour to make sure that they understand it, then it's far better to do that than to just plough on because the scheme says so, or the medium-term plan says so. But you really want the children to be learning and to be coming with you. So as I say, constantly assessing, constantly thinking, do they know this? Constantly working out what we need to teach, one step at a time, because as we said yesterday, English is unfortunately a complex language. I just like useless facts, really. Again, you can talk to various spelling people, phonicians who are way up at university level and what have you, and they will tell you that there's something like just over 200 different spellings for English, okay? And we established yesterday that we've got 44 sounds. We've only got 26 letters in the alphabet. So again, we know we've got a problem, which is why we have digraphs and trigraphs and other such things. And unlike any other alphabetically written language, okay, because some of them are they are syllabic or pictorial, but in alphabetically written languages, 69 of these graphemes, these spelling patterns, have more than one pronunciation. So again, if you threw all this at a small child, they just go, can't do it, can't cope with it. So again, we constantly revise and we build up as we go across the course. And we start off, as I said, with the most common and the easiest for the children to cope with. So we're just going to look at the progression of one sound just for a couple of seconds. Okay, so this is A, and we start with the AI because the letters are next to each other. So that's easy for the children to get hold of and think those two letters are making a different sound. That's a digraph. We have our actions and everything. We then teach them the two main alternatives, the A-Y, which we told them goes on the end of a word, and the A hop over E. Then in grammar 2, we introduce them to the idea that, you know, they have to make a decision. So which one is it? Which is the right way of doing it? These are the ways it could be. And if I don't know it, I can look it up in the dictionary. Okay. So we call those the main alternatives because actually there are other alternatives. So the EI or the EIGH, okay, they can also say A. So we then build on that knowledge. We say, right, they're your main ones. Here's another one. But there's actually only a very few words that use these particular alternatives. A lot of them are to do with 8, 18, 80. Okay. So again, we can give them clues and say, look at these words. These words go together. These words make a little pattern. So then we can tell them that actually, you know, we know that if at doesn't work in a word, we try a. Well, you know, I mean, we apply that to spelling then. Now look at these words. We've got crazy, a, that at is making an A sound. Now we can argue that that's a hop over because that Y is taking the place of an E, or it's a cousin to an E. So that influence is popping back. But others of them, it doesn't work like that. Taste, taste. I've got two consonants between that E at the end and the A, but that A is still, that at the beginning is actually making the A sound. Okay, so we introduce the single letter making the long vowel sound. Then again, on here, we have some more unusual ways that the A can be spelt. So the EI, if you're looking vein or veil, but again, it doesn't come up very often and it's in not many words. And a lot of the words are not ones that young children in particular will use. And then the final sheet we've got for an A spelling has got a mixture of the ones we've already taught, plus any strange or sometimes an alternative is only used in one or two words. You know, fate, F-E-T-E, the E's there are presumably making the A sound, but it doesn't come up really anywhere else. So again, it's just giving them this information and ordering it for them for the most useful to the ones that come up less often. But all the sounds, all the spelling patterns that we do, we apply this way of introducing them and working through the progression of the program. So what should they know for Grammar 3? Well, obviously, they need to know the basic 42 sounds. Okay. They need to be able to hear the difference between the long and short sounds, which again, if they've done Grammar 2, they should be able to have done a lot of work on. And again, if you're not sure whether they can, do one of the activities, call out some words, get them to say, is it a you know, a long sound or short sound? They can use their vowel hand. If I call out cat, okay, it's up here. If I call out cake, A, it's down here. If I call out box, it's up here. If I call out boat, it's down here. So I can very quickly get an idea as to whether the class of children in front of me know the long and short sounds and can hear them. And again, if they can't, I do some more work on it. If there's only one or two, then I can pull them out and work individually in a small group. If it's everybody, I do some lessons on it, right? Know the main alternatives for the vowel sounds. Again, they should know that because we've been working on those. They should know the doubling rule that we talked about yesterday, that if you've got a short vowel sound at the beginning, you need to double the consonant if you add a suffix with a vowel at the beginning of it, like the ED. And the same with the CK. If it's a short vowel sound, you need the CK. If it's a long vowel sound or any other vowel sound, you only have the K. So they should know those rules because they can then continue to apply them. And they should also be very proficient by this point in how to use a dictionary, because we have taught them, we have trained them how to do that. So in Grammar 3, you'll get a spelling list. And all the spelling lists actually are in the back of the book. So you can photocopy the page from 1 all the way through. You can photocopy it and cut the spelling list out and stick it in a book to go home. And then you know that the words they've got are spelt correctly. When children write it out for themselves, sometimes it's either not clear or they make a mistake. It takes quite a lot of time actually copying out a number of words, particularly for the poorer children in the class. So you can stick the spellings into a book which goes home and the parents can then help the children. We often had juniors who came down and would stick the spelling lists in the books at lunchtime and put them in the children's trays, and then that was all done. But again, just like Grammar 1 and 2, the spelling lists are carefully thought out. And in fact, in this one, which is the first one from Grammar 3, okay, we have said they need to know all the basic 42 sounds, the single letters and the digraphs. They should know the doubling rule. And they should be able to cope with longer words or compound words. And as you can see, there are words with examples of these in this spelling list. So this spelling list will allow you to check and to assess that your children know what they're supposed to, and that if they don't, you can pick it up very quickly and do a bit of teaching to make sure that you are going to be able to keep up with what they're supposed to do. And the spelling lists for grammars 3 to 5 have all got 18 words in, as you can see, so it's gone up. And the reasoning behind them is the same. Okay, so again, this is the first one in Grammar 4, and again, this will go over everything they're supposed to know, so you can do a quick assessment on them for it. But they're broken up into 3. 1 to 6 will be simple, regular words that can be sounded out, and the children should be able to spell with the knowledge that they already have. The next set, 7 to 12, will be regular words, but they will contain some of the alternative spellings that have already been covered in them. So in this one, we've got archway, so we've got the AY. Okay. And then the last lot, 13 to 18, the third set, will have longer words or more unusual words that may not necessarily be everyday words, but they're quite useful or they're quite interesting. Okay. Now, I know someone who gives their children 1 to 12 for a spelling test and then uses the last one. Either their top table can have 18, or they use it, they pick a couple out and do it as bonus words. Again, in a way, it's up to you to make the program work for you and your children. You can even use it just as a sort of vocabulary list. You know, always go over and make sure they know what these words mean. But say they should be able to work them out by using their ears, and then their eyes, then their minds. The tendency as children get older is when they come up to you and say, how do you spell a word? If they say, how do you spell famish, for example, you'll go F-A-M-I-S-H. okay? Because that's what we do as adults. That's how we tend to think about words, or if somebody asks you for a word. But actually, even, you know, grammar 5, grammar 6, even at that age, I would still, if someone came and asked me for the word, I still say to them, can you sound it out for me? Because actually, that is what you need to do, even as an adult, okay? So, famish, oh yeah, and off they go. Sometimes it's just confidence they need. Hopefully, if they've been through the program, they will have the confidence to do that. But I still will go through the list of words with them. I will still sound them out with them. I will still look at the difficult bits, the interesting bits, the things that we're teaching that day, even if they're 11, okay? Because actually we are still introducing new things, and we are still building on that knowledge that they have. Now, in grammar 3, what do we do? So we start off, again, quite simply with things like the letter N making an sound. And this gets everybody. I will say to teachers, right, we've got the word pink, okay, and we're using our ears. I've got the word pink. If I take the last sound off, what word am I left with? If I take the last sound off, what word am I left with? And everyone goes, pin, because they're spelling with their eyes. And what they've done is they've thought about the word pink, and they've taken that letter K off, and then they go, oh, I've got pin left. But if you listen, pink, p, I, k, that n is making an sound. Okay, so we talk about that. Ellie, where the E is silent, making an L sound, because that comes up lots and lots in English words. Okay, then we look at things like TCH in the word like kitchen. The T is there, but only just. And hedge, again, that D, you have to listen very carefully to hear it. And we go over the soft C and G that we talked about yesterday. So if the C or the G is followed by an E, I, or Y, the C will go S, and the G will go J rather than G. Okay. Then we introduce other spellings to them, like the IE. One of the most well-known rules in English is I before E except after C. Okay, but that works if you want to make the sound E. Again, it's all linked back to the sound. Then we've got the Y that comes in words like myth, where it's making that I sound. So again, we introduce, we go over what it's done before, and then we tell them something new. The saying R is an interesting one for the UK, because actually that depends where you live. If you're a southerner like me, I will say bath. So that sound in the middle is an R. If you live up in the north, they will say bath. They have a bath, they walk down the path, whereas I walk down the path. Okay, so certain accents don't have that problem at all. Other accents do. We do actually put a little note of that in the book, because again, it's not actually wrong to say bath, but it's an accent. It's an accent thing. Then say we go over other ways that the Z sound is made, and when it's when it's following a W, often says O. Okay, so there are lots of words, swallow, swan, that W, for some reason or other, affects the sound of that so it makes an O sound. So again, we look, there's only a fairly limited number of words. We look at that collection of words and try and help the children to remember them, so that when they hear the word swan and they break it down and sound it out, they remember to put that in it, not the O. And then again, we go over some of the things that we have already looked at, but again, we're looking at them in more detail for spelling. So the ear sound, how you spell that. Some more silent digraphs like the gunner, the gnome, or the nu. PH, we already know says f sometimes, but sometimes so does the letters GH. Okay. Again, we're always building one little bit at a time, and then we start looking at suffixes and putting those onto words. Okay, so this is the spelling sheet for Grammar 3. As always, we have got the spelling list. We have got an activity which uses the spelling words, because if the children do something with those spelling words, they remember them so much better. If they just get a list that they look at, don't do anything with, stick it in their bag, and you come back to it on a Friday morning, not many of them are going to get it all right. But if they've done something with them, if you've looked at the sounds, if you've marked up your spellings, if you've done some activities with them, they are far more likely to remember them. So all our sheets have an activity, okay? Then, because we have taught them in Grammar 1 and 2 how to use the dictionary, okay, we want them to practice that, and we want them to become really, really proficient at it, because we don't want them to spend half an hour, 45 minutes finding a word in a dictionary. Okay, we want them to be useful and to find it as quickly as we can. So there are 6 words they have to look up, the words in the dictionary, and write the page number in the box underneath. And then the bottom section is always a revision of some kind. Okay, so for this one, obviously this is Grammar 3. So the revision on here actually is to do with long and short vowels, because that is, again, as I say, important for you to assess that they know it. And what we ask them to do is we ask them to look at these words, and if it's a short vowel sound, they put a little cup shape over it, a bit like you know, when you're looking at the phonetic alphabet and things. If it's a long vowel sound, they have a line, and if it's a hop over or a split digraph, we have a line, and we just dot above the A, letter E, to show that we know that that's involved with that sound. So again, as I say, you can use this first sheet to assess your children and what they know, because we want them to be able to cope with what we are then going to teach them from then on. So this is a bit like the dot and the dive we did yesterday, whereas that goes through a whole word. So on this case, we are purely looking at and thinking about the short and long vowel sounds. Now, as I just said, the spelling activities, so this is from the pupil book, because it's got colour on it. The spelling activities, it might be like here, we've got missing letters, and they have to look at the spelling words and fill in the missing letters in the words. It might be looking at the meaning of words, obviously very important. It might be a word search where they have to find the spelling words and put them in, you know, either colour in the squares or circle them. And then one of the words from the spelling list won't be in there, so they have to find out what that one is. Or in this case, we've got a crossword. Again, it's trying to make the spellings have a use and to be fun, and to make it a bit more like a game rather than just, here's a list of words, learn it. Okay, so there's always activities to do with the spellings for that week. So, as we've said before, we revise the main ways of making the long vowel sounds together. This was the sheet you saw from Grammar 2. And we're saying these are the main ways. Write it down. If you're not sure, write it down, then look at it. What can you see? In Grammar 3, and as we go up, they get them all together, all the alternatives we've taught so far, plus any new ways of doing it. So we're taking them up a level each time that we do things. But, you know, this time they have to remember that teacher, the E is an EA, that coffee, that E on the end is a double E, not the Y or an EA. So they've got the mixed spelling list that they have to apply the knowledge that they have been working on to. In grammar 3, we go over again. Remember, this is a spelling. They can probably do all this for reading, but we are now going back and look at things in depth, and we are looking at it from the point of view of making them aware of spellings and very good spellers. Okay, so we've said that normally to make the long sound, you need 2 letters, 2 vowel sounds, 2 vowel letters, but actually we know that sometimes that letter, when it comes on its own, can make the long A sound. And so we teach that. The same with the other vowel letters. So in words like even, it's not even, it's even, that E is at the front. Iron, not iron, I can't even say it now. Over, got the O sound at the beginning. Okay, it doesn't always come at the beginning, but I've picked these words out because that is the case. Unit, okay, not unit, unit. So again, we're telling the children, and again, we give them a selection of the most common words that use those particular ways of spelling it. Grammar 4, we start off with a good old schwa. What is the schwa? Oh my goodness me. All right, the schwa is a terrible thing. The schwa is a swallowed vowel sound in an unstressed syllable. So if we look at the first word, panda, pa-a-na, that a is definitely there, pa-a-na-da. And then that last sound, it's not pand-a, it's pand-uh. We have that sort of sound on the end, because actually panda is a bit like giving our lips a workout. Doctor, right? It's not doctor, and it's not doctor, doctor, okay? The schwa can be any of the English vowel sounds, unfortunately, and it's that sort of sound that you get. But again, we go over a selection of words, the most commonly used words for them, and actually the easiest way to get children to cope with and remember the schwa sound. When you're reading, you do, as I say, just automatically, because otherwise your lips are getting a workout, make the right sort of sound. But the easiest way to help them to remember how to spell it is to stress the sound that it should be. So we will say grammar or doctor or camel, okay? That's not how you really pronounce it, but that's how we pronounce it in order to remember how to spell it. And the children work quite well with that. And again, once they know that word, once it's gone into their word bag, into their head, then they don't need to do that. But adults, any adult you speak to here, and if you say to them how to spell doctor, they will go to doctor and stress that or sound. So as I say, the schwa, no, it's there, no, it's that sound, but know that it's taking the place of something else and what it is. As I say, the easiest way is when you're saying the words to stress what it should be, what the spelling is. Pattern, not pattern. Again, that W affects the OR sound. It's not, I can't even say this word, worm. It's worm. It turns it to an sound. W for some strange reason does very odd things to letters next to it. Okay, and again, like hunch, the gets lost a bit. But again, it's just pointing out problems that children often have, and you know, they learn about them and they don't have them. Then we have in grammar 4 lots of work on suffixes, so things that they add on to the end of a word, and prefixes, which they add on to the beginning of them, and we look at their effect on words. How do we add them? Because we have done that spelling rule, that spelling set of patterns. We've done that before, okay, and they know and they understand that rule or those rules. So again, we're not necessarily, we're teaching them something new, but they're using their existing knowledge in order to know how to cope with it and what to do. Grammar 4 spelling sheets, again, as you can see, quite similar. An activity of some sort to do, the spelling lists, some revision. And then down at the bottom, there is something different, because on the bottom of every spelling sheet in Grammar 4, there are some sentences which we ask them to parse, so identify the parts of speech, and then they need to they need to parse the verb, so they can do the same thing in the verb. So which type of verb is it? Obviously, we'll be doing verbs under grammar later. But again, it just gives them an awful lot of practice in this, very simple, and they get very, very good at it. Because it's quite repetitive in terms, a friend of mine who teaches just up the road, she puts these out on a Monday morning while she does the register and things, and the children actually start off and start working through the sheets themselves, because they know what they're supposed to be doing. They know the structure of what they're being asked to do. She then teaches the point and the things that she needs to do, but the children actually love the fact that they know how the sheets are set up. They know what's going to, going to be asked of them. And then they have got more brain space available to listen to what she's actually teaching to. The difference in Grammar 4 is that there is a second page. It's actually at the back of the book, but each of them has a second page, because obviously the children are getting older now. There is room for dictation sentences, because again, dictation is still important even at this stage and age. Practicing the words and the spelling patterns that the children have been learning. And then again, there is more revision of something that you have taught them that's in the program. And again, it's really good to come back to things. Teach it, and you come back and do another little go at it, another little nibble of it, and just again, because actually that's what keeps it in the children's mind. And repetition is one of the very powerful ways of teaching things. You know, we all know you don't teach it once and they've got it, so we keep coming back to things. We teach it, have another go at it, and this makes sure, or we try and make sure in this way, that all the children come with us. So say in 3 and 4 and in 5, but 3 and 4 particularly, there is a lot of work on prefixes and suffixes. We looked at these yesterday briefly. Prefixes are added at the beginning of the words, suffixes added to the end of the word, and we looked at that spelling, how you did it by adding the ed. Okay, not all suffixes start with a vowel. So here the first two have got full, okay, which doesn't begin with a vowel. So actually, even in the word like hope, we don't need to do anything, we don't need to drop an E or anything like that, we can just add it in. But again, we're building on knowledge that the children already have and saying, you know how to do this, okay? Now here's something else that uses that, because the more you can add on to things that you already know, the easier it is for children to learn anything. Happiness, it's that same rule with tough EY. Now it's no longer going to be on the end of the word. Cousin shy I comes back. And again, if we're adding a Y onto the end, it's a cousin to the vowels, so it can have the same effect. So we will still need to double that middle consonant to keep that short vowel sound at the beginning. So again, it's the same rule, but we're applying it in different situations and circumstances. And of course, we start learning that you can have prefixes and suffixes, and actually more than one of each sometimes when we come to making up words. And we add these to what we call root words. So there's a word that's sort of the start of it, and we start adding things to that to make bigger and longer words. Because what we're trying to do is get children interested in words, interested in playing around with words, as well as the meanings of words. In the back of the handbook, you have the templates of our prefix and suffix, okay? And again, I've made up sets. I have sets with the bits for words in. I have blank heads and blank tails as well. And again, the children can play either making up the words on the list or just sit there and try and make up words that they can. Again, you are trying to make them experiment, to encourage them to think about words. And this is the beginning of what happens if I add this to it, what happens if that happens, as well as building up their spelling knowledge. And it is part of their spelling knowledge. And again, as I say, spelling and grammar overlap. You know, they're, like we say, reading and writing, reading and spelling are two sides of the same coin. You know, it's the same. There are things that overlap for spelling and grammar. So in this case, when we add a Y, the suffix of a Y to a noun, it becomes an adjective. So dusty, noisy. But again, we've got the rule. We know we don't want the two vowels, the E and the Y together. So we've dropped the E to add the Y. And again, we know we've got to double that consonant D so that we preserve the sound in muddy. So again, it's all the things they know, but now they're learning more about it and why they're doing it and what effect it will have on the word. Okay, if we have a noun and we add the suffix al, then we get an adjective. So magic becomes magical. Bride becomes bridal. Again, we apply the rule that we know. We don't want an E and an A next to each other there. So the E is dropped and we just add the AL. And orchestral, again, we wouldn't say orchestral and then have two A's. So one of the A's goes and we just add the AL on the end. So it's the same rules, but in a different situation. But this means that this is what children can cope with lots of different spellings, because actually, you know, we do eventually want them to be independent spellers, not to have to come and ask constantly when they want a word. An adjective plus ly, okay, you get an adverb. Quick, quickly. Okay, we can just add that straight because we've got that CK digraph, which is keeping the I sound short. I can just add that ly on the end. Gently, again, I don't want an E and a Y there. Easily, the Y is gone because shy I has come back. But again, as well as looking at the spelling, we're looking about the word. What does it do? What's its meaning? Okay, so as I say, we want to be word detectives. We want them to think about words. We want them to understand words, and we don't want them to be frightened of words. In the grammar 3 to 6, we spend quite a lot of time looking at homophones, basically because we have quite a lot of them in English. It's another crossover between spelling and grammar, as you can see here. It's or it's with an apostrophe. If you know your grammar, you're fine, because you only ever use it's with an apostrophe if it's short for it is, so the verb to be. There, and there, again, one's a preposition, one's a possessive adjective, one is a verb. So again, knowing your grammar could sometimes help them make the right spelling choices. So these are homophones. So homophones are spelt the same. No, they're not. We've just gone back. Excuse me for a moment. These are heterographs. So they sound the same, but they are spelt differently. Okay. And we need that very much for spelling. We need to make sure we've got the right one. When we're speaking, it doesn't matter because we make the right sound. But when we're spelling, we need to make that choice. We also have homographs, which are spelt the same but have a different meaning. And that is equally as important because obviously you want to know that you've got the right meaning from the word. Homo means same, graph means spelling or writing. Okay, so again, we look at words like bark. The dog barks, the tree bark was rough. Okay, it's the same word, but it has a different meaning. I ring the doorbell, he gave me a ring. So again, we're looking at words by looking at what their spelling is and what their part of speech and all this sort of thing is. Then we are giving the children a chance of having a go and making sure they get it right. We also have heterophones. All this just goes a bit mad in your head after a while, which is spelt the same but pronounced differently. So as I say, we are very complex as a language. So the word spelt B-O-W could be bow, as in a bow and arrow, or bow. They gave a bow at the end. But again, if children are aware of this, and we gradually teach all these things as they go up, T-E-A-R could be tear. They tear the paper up. It could be tear in what he cries. So we go over these and we try and explain the difference in meaning and get them thinking about the alternative spellings. By the time we get up to grammar 5, we're looking at more at spelling patterns. We've gone over most of the main alternatives for the sounds. We are looking at spelling patterns. Okay, we look at more prefixes because, again, they will often give a clue to meaning. If it's micro, it means something small. If it's mega, it's something huge. Okay, we can get part of the meaning quite often from the prefixes. We go over more suffixes because there are a lot more of them. Okay, and they know how to add them. That's not a problem. What do they do to the words? So we go over these one at a time and look at the most common words that take those particular suffixes. And we also look at words ending in I, because we do have some. I'll come back to that shortly. Now, this is, again, in grammars 5 and 6, in fact, it's a very similar setup. We have the activity and the spelling on the first page. The second page is next to it. In grammars 5 and 6, the second page comes next to it. You don't have to go back in the book. You have space for dictation. You have revision of some description. And you have our word wall, which is at the bottom, which we will go over when we look at grammar. It's a great thing and helps you sort out words in a sentence really easily. And we have the spellings, as you can see here, on the side. And what we're doing is teaching them how to spell. So we are looking at syllables. In grammar 3, we introduce syllables. We introduce chopping words up into little bits, because as I said, if you get a big long word, if I said to you, I want you to take your pen and would you please write down the word anti-disestablishmentarianism? First of all, you'd probably go, no, why, what? And then secondly, if you did have to write it out, you break it down into syllables. So we teach children how to approach spelling words. Okay, so we've started off with our compound words, which they're very good at doing by this time. So blackbird, weekend. Then we've started talking about breaking them down into sounded, the chunks of the word which have got a sounded vowel in, and that's very important. Okay, and we have our chin bumps. So week end, okay, English, black bird. So have your chin bumps, you can feel it, and you break the word down into the little bits. Now, again, the grammarians that you talk to will give you all sorts of very complicated things and 8 different types of syllables and this, that, and the other. But we try and keep it very simple because we're talking to young children. So, as I said to you, if I ask you to write down a big word like this, A-N-T-I-D, okay, that's not how they're going to learn. So even as an adult, we would break it down into bits. Anti, a-n-t. That's how we would attack a word. That's how we want the children to learn how to confidently write long words. Okay. So I said sounded, I said spelling with our ears, sounded vowel sounds. So in a word, unkindness, okay, unkindness, okay, we would have 3 syllables, unkindness, okay. Hunted. Have a quick go. Hunted. We've got 2. Hunted. Last one, jumped. Now, quite a lot of people will go, oh, look, yeah, you've got the jump and you've got the ED on the end. So that ED, that's a vowel, isn't it? But think about it. Jumped. Jumped. That ED isn't sounding. That E isn't sounding. It's making a T sound. So it's only got 1 syllable in that word. Okay. So we teach about syllabification. And we use that in grammar 5, particularly because in the first weeks, 1 to 12, we will give them the word, we break it into the syllables, and we put the lines underneath and we ask them to write the syllables. The next set of 12 weeks, we give them the whole word, but we give them the lines for the syllables, and it's up to them to break it down. And then the last 12 weeks in grammar 5 and in grammar 6, it's up to them. They get the word and they have to break it down into the syllables. But again, it's teaching them how to learn to spell and to attack a word. We talk lots about root families, because again, if you can get the root of the word and go back to the root, often it helps with the spelling as well as with the meaning. And there's lots of things, as I say, you can have a little look here, because I am conscious of time. We can have a little look here. We've got some words, and actually we've got 3. Care, all those words have got that root word care. In the purple ones, they've all got that root word from operate. And in the blue, they've all got the root word from separate. Okay. Words ending with I, we don't have them in English, but we do. But they're not English words. Okay. All these words are used in English, but again, we have taken them from other languages. Safari is Arabic, Kiwi is Maori, okay? Broccoli, spaghetti are Italian. We have words that end in I, but they're not English words. But again, having told children that English words don't end in I, we then have to explain why we do have words that do, because, you know, you've got to meet these problems head on. We look at plurals, which again, plurals is a sort of grammar side, but lots of, we have plurals sometimes which end in I. So fungus, when it's a plural, is fungi, okay, because it comes from Latin. However, octopus comes from Greek. So technically we should say octopuses, but actually what a lot of people say octopi, and the same with cactus, okay, or cacti. And in fact, it has become so, it's just by usage, it has become acceptable to actually use either. But again, we're building on knowledge on plurals that the children have already got. So again, knowing where a word comes from can sometimes help you in terms of the spelling. And, you know, when you've got spelling, when they've got lots of words, when we've got, you know, they're able to use this, we can do, because spelling is great, because we want to be able to spell words correctly. But the reason we want to be able to spell words correctly is because they've got to write. They've got to write letters. They've got to write creatively. Okay, we want them to be able to, without spending huge amounts of time worrying about the spelling of words, be able to write creatively. Okay, syllables, one of the great things one can do is things like haiku. You get nice little poems. Again, actually with the syllables and thinking about the words, it's quite a tough ask for the children, but it's really good. It really makes them think about you know, the words that they're using. And there are different forms of poems using syllables and things. Or you can get them tweets, 280 characters, including spaces. Again, you know, tweets, children are quite likely to be on Twitter or to write tweets or to look at tweets. And again, being able to think very carefully about the words that you use is very important, because you can't just run on and on and on. And we just had to go at the end, just for a laugh. And again, if you would like to have a go later on, then that's up to you. Some haiku about learning to spell. Learning how to spell letters, sounds, alternatives, which is in this word or a word. First it is unknown, I read it and spell it, and thus my word bag grows. I quite like that one. I always think of my word bag when I get new words and add them in. The same with the children. But that's why we're teaching spelling. It's not just because we want them to be able to spell every word that we throw at them in a spelling bee, but we want them to be able to have a letter that's beautifully presented, or to use lots of words and be able to spell words in creative writing. So I'm going to stop sharing there, because I know we're coming close to the end of our hour. And I can see that there's things in the chat box, although I couldn't see what they were.
So Sarah, thank you so much.
So are you going to go through the chat box, or?
Yes. So I can share a few questions with you.
Yeah.
If you allow.
Yep.
Okay. So the first question is, what is the best way to explain and give reason to children that spelling changes when a suffix is added to a word, as we don't want them to just rote memorize?
That's right, which is why we're teaching them the rule rather than just teaching them a line of letters. And what we're telling them is that you're adding this suffix, this group of letters, onto a word. But actually, you know, we've got these rules about having the vowels together, about the I being shy and going. If we're explaining why the spelling is going to change, then they have that understanding, and they are then going to be able to add the suffixes or change the spelling to add the suffixes, because they understand it's to do with the vowel sound, or to do with the fact that, you know, we don't want two A's together. There's no point. You know, and they're quite happy with that sort of explanation. But we're giving them the reasons why, not just saying this word is spelled this way. So.
Okay, so the next is there any answer key or teacher support for Jolly Grammar?
Yeah, if you read the teacher's page,
yes,
there is lots of support. And in the teacher's book, this is a handbook, but in the teacher's book, the answer, there is an answer key in the teacher book. So the teacher's book does have, the handbook doesn't, for some reason. Space.
So the next is, if you want to learn more about Schwa, what do you suggest the right methodology, or suggest few books or sites to learn more?
There is quite a lot of writing about Schwa. I mean, my basic thing is not to get too hung up on it, really, because it is, as I say, it's a swallowed vowel sound in the unstressed syllable. So again, you know, everything comes together. It's very difficult to explain one thing without explaining other things. So, you know, because you are, I mean, we've done everything sort of together this morning. Obviously, when you're teaching it in a progressive manner. But, you know, because you've taught them about syllables, and because they know some syllables are stressed, then it's easier to then explain that actually in the unstressed syllable, then the sound will change. And again, you know, if you just get them to say things like doctor, panda, you know, they realize actually how difficult it is to say the words in that way. And that's really the understanding of what the schwa is, because it's a way of making, we're lazy, I suppose, when we speak. We make it as easy as possible for ourselves to say the word, you know, Robin, lemon, but it's to do with the easiest way of sort of saying it, really. But they say, you know, just for spelling, the easiest way is to stress what the spelling should be. And as I say, the easiest understanding is to say it with the correct sound, and then you realize why you don't say it that way. But there's lots of stuff out there.
Yeah.
Some of it is really complex.
Okay.
But again, it's just the depth you want to go into.
So Sarah, as we have all the letter songs in Jolly Phonics app, so is there any app for Jolly grammar songs? Like,
we have grammar songs. Do you know, I don't know whether it's in an app or not. Isn't that dreadful? I have no idea.
okay.
I thought there was, but I may be wrong. So yeah, no, I don't know. We had there are grammar songs, but as I say, whether on an app, I'm not entirely certain. I would have to check that and come back.
Okay. So I think these are all the questions we have at this time. Yeah. So we will conduct our quiz round just like we did yesterday. But before that, thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your expertise with us today. It was a pleasure having you as a speaker.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate your time and effort in making this webinar a success.
It's always nice to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah.
And good luck with today's quiz.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So now I like to introduce Ms. Akita, my co-moderator for today's evening. She will instruct us all on how to conduct the assessment. Over to you, Ms. Akita.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be sending the link for the quiz of today on the chat. Please click on any one link, as all the links are going to lead you to the same quiz. So please click on any one link and do the quiz. Please check, it's on the chat. The links to the quiz are on the chat. You can click on any one of the links and then you can start doing the quiz. Also, do remember to put in your email ID in the quiz, as you will get your certificates on the same email ID. Once you finish the quiz, you can leave the meeting. If there's any problem, if you're facing any problem, do messages on chat and we'll revert. Sending the link again in case you missed it. Please click on the link that I've sent on the chat. It will lead you to a page where it says login or join as a guest. Please join as a guest, enter your full name, enter your email ID, and carry on with the quiz. If you're not getting the option to join as a guest, you can just carry on and log in. So once you join the quiz, it will automatically ask you for your email ID. So you can just put in your email ID there. Joining as a guest is opening. Please give it some time because it's a lot of it takes a little time to load. So you can give it some time and it will open. It could just be a network issue. Once you are done, you can leave the meeting. Thank you. Once you click on the link, it will take you to another page where it says join the lesson as a guest. You click on that, or if it asks you to log in, you can even do that. Please click on join lesson. If it takes you directly to the page which asks you for your name and nickname, that's perfect. That's okay. Just enter your name and start the We will email your certificates to you within 7 to 10 business days. Once you've done the quiz, you can leave the meeting. Thank you. If it's not loading for you, it could be an internet issue. Please leave the meeting and then try, and you can join the meeting again if you have any questions. In case you're not able to, if in case the quiz is not loading, please leave the meeting and then attempt it, because sometimes it could just be an internet issue. Once you are done, please leave the meeting. Thank you for joining us. The certificate certificates for yesterday's session and today's session you will receive within 7 to 10 days. Everybody, for yesterday's session and today's session, you will get the certificates within 7 to 10 days. So for all the webinars, you can expect the certificates within 7 to 10 days of the webinar. Once you finish the quiz, you can leave the meeting. Thank you for joining us. Once you are done, you can leave the meeting. Thank you. Once you finish the quiz, you can leave the meeting. Thank you for joining us. Kindly leave the meeting if you're done. Thank you for joining us.